Good afternoon and welcome to Made in MIQTV. It's Wednesday and 4 o'clock. It's 4 o'clock once more. My guest this afternoon is old civilian Rory Bramley, and I will introduce you to him in just a moment. So welcome to those joining us. As I was just saying, our guest this afternoon is Rory Bramley. I'm very much hoping he will appear. It says he's joined. Here he is, in fact.
Hello.
Perfect. Hi there. So,
welcome,
Rory, to Made in MIQTV on a Wednesday afternoon, the last one of the year. And welcome to those people clicking to join us because they've seen that it's going live and they want to find out all about the life and times of another old civilian. So you're very welcome, and we're really grateful for you joining us this afternoon. Rory left Quegs in 2014. He was lucky enough or unlucky enough, depending on, we'll ask him about that in a minute, to be taught by me and many others. And he went off to university to study maths. And I'll let you take up the story from there. Give us a quick tour, and then we'll pick over the bits of it in time. Give us a quick tour of everything that happened since you walked out these doors.
Sure, yeah. So, like you say, I studied maths until 2018, finished my integrated master's degree, graduated, moved back to Wakefield because I didn't have a job. Eventually found one, so working in accounting, essentially in a sort of low-level role for nearly a year actually, to be fair, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. And that was how I kind of stumbled into my current line of work, which is data engineering. So basically software development specifically for databases and sort of cloud-based systems that companies use for data. And I've been doing that for about 2.5 years now.
Wow.
That's basically it, to be fair.
That brings us up to date. Right, so you've been very modest. Rory actually left Quegs because he got a place at, I'm going to get this wrong, Pembroke College, Oxford?
Bang on, yeah.
Is that right? Okay, it's Pembroke College, Oxford, and where he studied for 4 years and got himself a master's degree in maths, as he said. We're just actually going through the processes at the moment of people applying to Oxford and Cambridge. What memories have you got of that time? Fond memories? Have you blocked it out? It's hard work. What when you think back to applying to university and all that was involved, how do you remember that?
Yeah, the application process, I remember being very smooth. I think we were definitely handheld through it to a large extent by very capable careers professionals like yourselves, and Mr. Pesterfield was in charge of it at that time as well.
Still is, yeah.
Yeah, and he kept everyone sort of whipped up, getting their personal statements out in time. I think my form tutor as well, Mr. Chatterton, helped me quite a lot wording of that, as that's something he's done quite a lot.
Sure.
But I remember it being pretty smooth. Obviously, I got mine off early for the Oxbridge deadline anyway. So I was by now, I was starting to hear back from most of my choices, actually. And then it was basically even before I found out about the interview from Pembroke, yourself was drilling. I think it was me, Joe, was Andrew Gare, doing chemistry, and a few others who, if not in lessons, but after school, I think on Wednesdays for an hour, we'd be doing stuff together, doing questions on each other. Yeah, and I had that session with your friend Martin as well, didn't I?
Yeah.
Who is he still at Greenhead?
He is. He's head of maths at Greenhead still, and he still helps out, and he's my go-to mathematician when I'm stuck. So shout out. He's probably not watching, but shout out to my good friend and excellent mathematician.
It was funny when I interviewed, I met a lad Joe who was from Greenhead, so he knew Martin.
Oh, brilliant!
Teacher. Yeah, we both had him. That was quite a coincidence.
And you sat an admissions test, I think, in those days. That would have still been the case, yeah, as they do now.
It was the MAT test. I think Oxford and Imperial both wanted that. Which, to be fair, that was the worst part of the whole process. That was awful. But I think everyone found it awful. I think it was just a particularly tough year for that test. Everyone at the interview was complaining about it, so I got some peace of mind and some validation from that.
Everyone else found it hard too. Yeah, and that's still the case. And the most competitive courses at many universities, as you say, not just in maths but in other subjects, will want an admissions test. So that's another part of a big part of the process. And you did well, and you then went down for interview. which obviously went well as well, and you got offered a place. And then the trick is getting the grades. I remember you mentioned some of your friends that were keen on maths and did extra. I remember the lads who are a year or two above you, and some of the lads who are younger started a bit of a dynasty, which has continued of people doing maths and helping other people do maths, and that's that has sustained, and more difficult during COVID. But I think it's important that they do that. Do we have the right angle challenge in your time? I'm not sure that was a thing.
Oh, it doesn't sound familiar.
No, so there's a national maths competition running. They're actually working on it this afternoon, where you upload answers, and now there's an against the clock section, so to break a code. So
Okay.
That's the sort of modern, and that's lower sixth and upper sixth all working, and younger ones working together. And I think thinking back to those days, I think the dynasty began around that time, maybe a little bit before, with you guys working in the maths department and sort of helping the younger ones and bringing them on, doing the challenges. Did you sit the Olympiad back in those days? I think you probably did.
I think I only did one of them. I didn't usually score high enough on the challenges to get the Olympiad. I did do quite a few of the team challenges. We did in groups. I think me and Joe Blythe did quite a few with Vibav, who was in the year above me. I don't remember if there was any with those in the year below. I don't think so. But those are usually quite good fun.
Some mathematicians there as well, Jack and Soham and James, who I've interviewed on here actually. He was our first one, our pilot episode, all that time ago. James Bowler from the year below. So yeah, good times. And then off you went to university. Tell us a bit about your university experience, because obviously you've followed in my footsteps, but quite a long time later. So I've got memories of doing maths at Oxford, but I imagine there were no computers and no internet and so on. So give us a quick overview of what it was like to study there, to study maths.
Don't know where to start, really.
What memories do you still? When you think about it, what jumps to mind? How do you remember it?
So I mean, the course itself is kind of split into kind of two different stages, because your first couple of years you have lectures in the big hall with 200 or 200. Yeah, I think it was like 200 in a year, but even by first year, probably only about 70% of those are going to make it to any given lecture. And then the tutorials are all in your college with a bunch of tutors who might be very senior academics, might be PhD or postdoc students. It varies. But you'll get to know them quite well. They'll get to know you and give you a lot of really good feedback. So I think the first couple of years, definitely the attention you get through the teaching makes a big difference. I think that first term in the first year is really critical, I think, because you have to change the way you think about maths and how you approach studying the subject quite massively, I think. Because when you're at school, it's just, this is the topic, here's a few examples to kind of ease you into it, right? Go do 30, 40 similar.
Do some practice. Yeah.
Just slope upwards in difficulty, and then you'll realize you get it. At uni, it's really not like that. It's more like, here's 8 or 9 pages of the densest notes you've ever seen. Stare at it for 3 or 4 hours, and then maybe you'll get a question done. Which, in the early days, it's awful. It feels like your brain's melting out your ears, and you just want to bang your head.
I've obviously blocked that out, but I do remember things like that. Finding it, it's a shift from school for sure.
Definitely. I think so I would say to anyone in that situation, make friends with the other people in your college, because you'll need to pull your brains together in those early days.
That's good advice. Yeah.
I think so. And then after that, I wouldn't say it gets a lot easier. You definitely get used to it.
Like anything, yeah. You find your way. You find your way to cope when it's from that initial shift. I think
so. Yeah. The time management aspect is an absolute key, because your deadlines are flying at you throughout the term. Because it's only 8-week terms, of course, which differs from most of the unis, which are usually 10 or 11 weeks, I think. So it's very intense, but it's quite short. So you get a nice break after, but while you're there, it's pretty unrelenting.
And so knowing now what you know, then would you do it again? Do the same route? I don't know if I'd study maths if I was applying again.
I think I'd study maths or something very maths intensive, like maybe engineering or
same,
or maths and computing.
Or computing.
Maybe something with a bit more of a practical edge to it, just because I think it helps applying for jobs afterwards more.
Well, we'll come on to that in a minute.
And then if you've got some kind of evidence of like project-based work and working with other people, things like that. And yeah, whereas obviously just studying maths is so pure and theoretical that you have to kind of go out of your way to get other experiences as well.
Sure.
But if you're asking if I'd study at Oxford again, I think, to be honest, probably not, because I think the difficulty I found in those few years, I'm not really sure I'd want to repeat it, to be quite honest. It was very brutally challenging.
Yeah, well, you've been through it. You don't have to relive it. So and
Exactly.
the benefits, well, the benefits, no doubt, will, as I think I would say for me, the benefits come out at various times in terms of what you learn and what you pick up throughout your life. I'm sure you'll find. I hope you do. So yeah, you said about learning skills and getting a job. So you mentioned earlier, you came back to Wakefield because you didn't have a job. Talk to us about that sort of process, because obviously, you know, I imagine people think, oh yeah, maths degree from Oxford, you know, must be super employable, and you know, ultimately that's true. But I seem to remember having a conversation with you that you weren't too sure what direction you wanted to go, and therefore you needed a bit of time to sort of examine what was out there. Talk to us about that time.
Yeah, it's very true. So yeah, I had no idea what I wanted to get into really. I was looking at technology, software-based roles, but it was quite hard to get into without any kind of prior internship experience. It becomes a bit of a chicken and egg situation, basically, of chasing the experience before you can sort of land the roles. I wasn't sort of keen on, kind of finance, accounting-based kind of roles, but I thought that would probably be something I'd be able to do. Something technical, something numerate like that. I've already forgotten the question. Was it like?
Just reminiscing back to that time, and you took a job because you needed a job. I think I don't think you phrased it quite like that, but you needed something. So you did something for a year. What was involved in that, and what did you learn? I suppose is the most interesting part of that.
For sure, yeah. So I was working at Jet2 Holidays in Leeds as part of their finance department. I think in terms of what I learned from it, I think mostly about just how to work in a team environment, really, I think. I was very green, certainly in those early days. And I think I had to relearn a lot of the discipline that I sort of learned at school and then kind of left dormant when I was at uni.
That sounds about right. I think much freedom once you're working for a living.
Exactly, but it wasn't as hard as it could have been. So I think it trains you up very well in that respect.
And then you said I think, quote unquote, you stumbled into the next role. How did that come about?
I did, essentially, yeah. To be honest, I've told this story a lot, and I never can quite remember how I first learned about the company. I think it was just a random email from a sort of graduate job. Newsletter I must have signed up to. But since starting here, I've met loads of other people who I already knew that have come to the same place as well, which is kind of funny. That's good. But yeah, so where I'm working now is a company called Kubrick Group. So they specialise in looking. It was mostly STEM graduates, but I think they're a lot more flexible on that now. And the model is that they train you up in basically software, computing, data, technologies for 15 weeks, pay you to do it, and then they ship you out to one of their clients where you get to basically work full time on some really interesting projects with either people in similar situations, or sometimes you can end up with quite a lot of responsibility on quite big projects. And that's it, basically. I'm in my third year working for them now.
Straight into it. And they take people without prior experience. That's
although
other people who want to develop in that field, basically. Yeah,
I think they've even sort of stratified out from that now, because they were getting quite a lot of both sort of recent graduates and people like me who'd been working for a year or two and were looking either to change or do something a bit more technical. I think they've now filtered those into like two different streams. So they have like an advanced stream where they're actually looking for people with, I think, 3 years of industry experience. They take you through the same thing, but then when you go to work client side, they put you in a more senior position, sort of managing other developers as well as taking on some of that yourself.
So tell me some of the challenges that you've had to face in that time then, because obviously 15 weeks training, and sounds like you're thrown into it a bit. You're with clients. I mean, we have talked about that in the past. You're with clients, so a bit of pressure.
I think so. The training for a lot of people was the easy part, because it was kind of like being at uni again. It was really fun, getting to learn a lot of new stuff, and you know, you're doing it together, really. So that's I think pretty much everyone who goes through it looks back on that part very positively. Yeah. The challenging part really was it was all remote because of the pandemic.
Of course, yeah.
So when we started with our clients, none of us had been into the office a single time. We're basically just having to start this whole new career at a company and meet everyone just through Teams meetings, and then figure out our way through that. So that was the hardest part for sure. Just that complete lack of a personal communication, really. But again, like, yeah, you get used to it.
Yeah, well, you get used to anything. Again,
even if it can still be quite difficult. So even now, I am still pretty much entirely remote, but I don't mind it as much because I know I do have the option to go in and meet people. I just choose not to.
I was going to ask you about that. So you mostly work remote at the moment and just meet up when
I am, yeah.
As and when?
Yeah, so like I say, even though it was so difficult at first, because it's kind of known and we're trusted that we can work remotely, it's kind of become a bit of a luxury, really, in terms of being able to sort of live at home and save quite a lot of money, as I have been doing through the pandemic and now.
That's good.
So it's been a positive overall, definitely.
That's really interesting, because would you say that's now the norm in your industry, or is it a mix?
I don't know. I think most clients are asking people to go back into the office more. Usually 2 to 3 days. I've not had that yet.
Right. So you're able to carry on doing what you're doing.
Yeah, but with me being sort of up here in West Yorkshire, whereas most are in London, then that expectations.
The office isn't as easy.
Yeah, they're not going. Yeah, but if they're reasonable, they're not going to look at me and say, right, well, we want you in 3 times, because they know what that's going to entail, and it is a bit of a bargain. It's a bit of a bargaining chip we can carry around, really, because this job is something that suits itself very well to being remote, because pretty much all the technology is cloud-based, so it's all you wouldn't be working differently if you were in an office anyway. You'd just be with people.
Right. Okay. So the work is the work, and actually, because you're all connected. That's interesting as well. I think there are other industries where that is true, and others, such as ours, where that's less true. Teaching remotely is quite different to teaching in person. I don't think.
Oh, sure.
We did it because we had to, and we got used to it. But I'm not sure how many teachers would miss the remote lessons.
No, I don't think. My friend Kane couldn't stand it.
Of course, Kane's a teacher, isn't he? Yeah.
He was a teacher, and he's now getting into a PhD. But
is he? Good for him.
Yeah.
Oh well.
But it was it was the tribulations of COVID teaching that sort of made him change his mind about what he wanted to do.
So day to day, then, what is your job? What do you do on a typical day? What does it look like? Talk to us about what you do now.
Yeah, sure. So usually we'll have what's called a daily stand-up first thing, which is basically all the developers in a meeting, just going through, usually 3 things. What did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? And a block on anything. A blocker being something that is preventing you from your development that someone else needs to sort out, basically.
Oh, okay.
Usually outside of maybe a few sort of planning meetings, or we also have what are called retrospectives occasionally, where we talk about sort of previous projects, bits of work, what went well and what didn't. But generally it's a lot of unsupervised development time. I'd say probably I wouldn't have more than an hour and a half of meetings in a day, and the rest of it's development time. So
when you say developing go on, what does that mean? Yeah.
Well, like I was going to say, that can be incredibly varied. It might be pulling some data together for a business user because they need a report, for anything that they need that for. It might be there's a bug with one of the databases. Can you fix it? It might be. I'm trying to think. My mind's going blank. It could be anything. It could be reviewing other people's code. It could be writing code myself. Yeah.
And the projects, I guess, will take different amounts of time. Some will be relatively short. Some will take longer.
Exactly.
To a deadline.
Well, we tend to work in sprints, which are usually 2 weeks. there'll be sort of planning meetings about what is potentially in scope for the next sprint, and sometimes things will carry over. Sometimes things will either get binned off, or they'll just realise, oh no, this is actually massive. We need to dedicate time and resources to it,
Yeah.
so we'll shelve it for now. It depends. Different companies have different ways, but sprints are probably the most common. So yeah, usually either 2 or 4 weeks.
On this particular
in
aspect.
theories like that, yeah. Or you might other places use, I think, what's called Kanban, which is a bit more in parallel. It's just kind of you just keep chucking stuff in and working on it simultaneously. But that's kind of in the field of product management, which I don't do. I just work on what I'm told to. But, there is a whole
code and
there is a bit of a whole art/science around how you actually best manage software teams and projects, which is a bit about what that is for anyone who's interested.
Oh, okay, cool. And what's next then? What do you see as the development opportunities from where you are? What sort of area are you happy with where you are, or are there things that you'd like to get into that you've not managed to yet? What's next?
Yeah, so I definitely want to stay in the data development space. I think for me, given my maths background and my technical skills, I'm looking to get more into the machine learning side of things. That's a very technical and very competitive area, and it's not one that people really get into without a lot of experience first. Often when you look at companies' data science teams, you're looking at an average of like 10 years experience with a PhD. Like these are very technical, very smart people. So I'm kind of looking for maybe a kind of halfway role that might get me there, sort of both what I'm doing at the moment and what I'm hoping to learn and take it from there. But that's not happened quite just yet, but we'll see.
Working towards that. Well, good luck with that. So that's looking forward. If we look back a little bit, when you think back to your time at school, have you got any particularly strong or influential memories? Anything that jumps out at you as a moment that is a strong memory from school?
Yeah, sure. I think one particular was in year 12 when myself and Joe Blythe, we were in London for the National Maths Challenge that year that we'd got through. I remember talking to Vibav on the way back, because Joe had teased to him that I was wanting to study medicine at uni, and he was like distraught. He was like, "Why do maths?" And we were talking about it for like an hour on the way home. And then I remember getting home and thinking, you know what? Actually, I think he's right. I do remember
you telling me that you changed.
Yeah.
I often quote you as the student I cured from wanting to do medicine and converted to maths to other medics who do further maths. I don't always cure them, but
I remember that
conversation. You in the name of maths.
I remember that conversation because I mentioned it to Joe like before our further maths lesson. And literally the whole lesson they were just laughing. They're like, "You're going to tell him? You're going to tell him?" I was like, "I think so after." And you just laughed. You were like, "What did your parents think?" I was like, "Oh,
yeah, exactly. They're going to blame me."
All right. No, that was never it. But yeah, I just remember you just laughed. You like belly laughed, and you're like, "What do your parents think?" I was like, "Oh, they're fine with it." Right, okay, we'll start tomorrow.
It's a big switch and a change of direction. But it's obviously the right one. You worked out well. You've been very successful. With thinking back to school, any teachers that spring to mind? Some of them might not be here anymore, of course, but who was particularly influential on your career? You don't have to say me, but I did teach you in the sixth form, so
yourself certainly. Jeff Tingle was definitely a favourite. I absolutely loved his lessons. He's so passionate and enthusiastic and so animated. You couldn't help but just hang on his every word. He was absolutely brilliant teacher.
Yeah.
I think Dr. Brunt has left, hasn't he? But he was similar. I never saw any other teacher who could really just walk in with nothing but a pen and just hold his own for 50 minutes like that. Any question, anyone, you were never going to slow him down. He was absolutely
good mathematician as well as a good physicist. That's true.
In fact, I recall him saying that he wished he'd studied maths instead of physics.
Yes, I seem to remember that as well.
Yeah.
He likes maths a lot. Well, he still does, I imagine, but I'm not seeing him for a while. And I found the maths quiz he wrote actually 3 or 4 years ago. He did it because he taught some A-level maths as well. After you'd left, he had a go at that as well. So we didn't actually talk about your A-levels. Did maths, further maths, chemistry and physics from what you just no biology and physics.
I did biology AS, but yeah.
That's what it is, right? Yeah. Yes, because you thought you were going to be a doctor at one point. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, but we don't talk about that anymore.
Any other memories from school? Any trips or anything that you look back on with any fondness?
Yeah, so I went on Mr. Dean's Italy trip twice, actually. I was tempted to get the hat trick, but I was running out of money at that point.
As a non-classicist, you enjoyed the classics trip?
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible. Well, it wasn't really an academic trip. That was the best part of it. It's basically an October holiday. We had an absolute specialist talking you through everything you saw for a week, so it was brilliant.
Yeah, that is good.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say, I saw you at recent dinners at a couple of them, and so you're still in touch with. I guess you've mentioned various people. You're still in touch with quite a few of your friends from school.
I am, yeah. Which
I think is a brilliant feature of our school, because I'm not really in touch with anyone I was at school with. I'm in touch with university friends more, but you're in touch with quite a lot of Quiggs boys, and probably will be again. How often do you get to see people, and are they all doing well? And please pass on my best when you do see them. I saw you and Jack obviously not long ago.
Of course, I mean Jack I see most weeks because he still lives in Wakefield as well. But yeah, there's a pretty strong contingent of us, to be fair, and I think if it weren't for the old Savs dinners, that probably wouldn't be the case. Kept in touch a bit while we were at uni, because people would be home generally at the same time, so it's quite easy to get people out. But now it's kind of the old Savs is one of the only real things that can do that now, where we can get everyone out for one night. So it's been absolutely great for us. It's quite rare. I don't even out of my uni friends who went to schools kind of similar to Queggs, they don't seem to really have anything like that, or if they do, it's not treated as seriously and as the old civilians is, which is a shame.
It is a shame, and surprisingly, actually, I would have thought other schools, but I think it is a real strength of this school is that the old boys and the network of former students, and we're trying to grow that all the time. Any old civilians watching, you know. We welcome people back in school. We've had people helping with interviews. We've had people helping with support in general. Things like this, which is a great thing to do. You know, sort of give back in that way. Mentoring for current students. So I mean, I think we're trying to grow that all the time. And what we find time and again is that the old boys, yourself included, want to stay in touch and want to help and support. So. It is really, really good and a big part of the school. I cannot believe, I say this every week, but half an hour has absolutely gone in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, I don't feel like I've really said anything.
A couple of last questions. If you could go back and tap young Rory on the shoulder and offer him some advice from the future, what sort of things might you say to him without ruining it for him? But what sort of advice, things you know now that perhaps would be useful to know then when you look back?
Yeah, I thought about this, and I really don't know, to be honest. I think don't worry, like things will work out. I'm a big believer that working hard at something pays off in the end, even if not in the way you necessarily think or want it to. Yeah. And I think just stay in touch with your friends as well. I think those two things, your education and your friendships that Queggs give you are to be valued, definitely.
You clearly appreciate those, and that's been good for you. That is lovely advice, and I think reassuring, because it is easy to worry about things, particularly if you thought you were going to be a doctor and then it's something else, and then what is the next opportunity. I think brilliant advice there about working hard, because the opportunities will come. Other people in this who sat where you're sitting in previous interviews have talked about that. Do what you're doing now, but do it really well, because you don't know what's around the corner. I think would you agree with that? I mean, I think that seems like very good advice.
I think so, yeah. And especially sort of at this time when people are looking at universities as well. So a few people might be disappointed, or maybe even, further down if they don't get their first place. But like I said, just keep working hard, and it will be, you will be rewarded for it, really.
Somewhere, sometime.
I think you're saying when it comes like careers aren't straight lines. People go back and forth around in circles sometimes. Like,
and it's not, that's not obvious when you're at school, I guess, that you have this idea that it's just going to map out to a line, but it's
when you're at school, the first slip back can feel like an absolute catastrophe, really, because it's not till you get older that you really have the perspective to kind of see how little some things actually matter in the grand scheme. But that's just being young, I suppose.
Well, you are still very young, and you've a very long and successful career ahead of you. Listen, thank you ever so much for joining us today. Please do, whenever you're next in the area or next near school, if you want to come in and say hi, just come and have some lunch. Come and catch up with some teachers who do remember you, who were here. And obviously, some have moved on, as we said, but there are plenty that it's not that long ago. 8 years, it's gone quite quickly, and I wish you all the best in your career in the future and for Christmas as well. So this was our last one before Christmas, but we'll be picking some new ones up in the new year in January. But thank you ever so much for joining us, Rory, and all the best. You take care.
No problem at all. No, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Cheers, bye.
Bye.